Hey friends, what do you want me to tell you? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Tezayin, Daf 16 of Masechta Moed Katan, friends. Daf 16 is a gewaltige daf. Daf 16 is a very big daf. Daf 16 talks about excommunication. Let's jump in. Where do we start? Okay. Daf Tezayin, 4 lines into the page. Amar Rave says, Rave, friends, you got your engines running? Because we got to keep moving over here. How do we know that when we have to excommunicate a fellow, oh, that's nice. Excommunicate a fellow. How do you know that when we want to excommunicate a fellow? Dennis, is that a word? It is now. So it says, Rabbi, how do you know that whenever we want to excommunicate a fellow? Oh, that's so good. Alright, that's very sweet. Alright, let's see if I could try again without laughing. World's best joke. I was thinking earlier, the best joke is to say that you're not funny. I can't even say it without laughing. The best joke is to say that you're not funny. It always gets a laugh. If everybody's looking for a quick laugh, just say you're not funny. Yeah, friends, we got a daf to learn. I was just saying how much we have to do. So whenever they excommunicate a fellow, that's so funny. So whenever they excommunicate a fellow, so they send a messenger of the court and say, "Hey, friend, come to Bezdin so we can excommunicate you." The pasuk says, "Vayishlach Moshe l'kol l'dasim v'la'avirim b'nei Eliyav." That Moshe sent to Dasan and Aviram. They were the two sort of stereotypical nudniks during the desert era. They aligned themselves with Korach. That was not a good idea. That was the end of them. So it says that Moshe sent to Dasan and Aviram. So we see that when somebody's being a nudnik and we're going to excommunicate the fellow, so we send a messenger to collect them. How do we know that that like an invitation is required to come to Bezdin? The pasuk says, that Moshe says to Korach, you and all your people. All right. The Kame Gavirabba, they have to come before a great fellow. The pasuk says, Lifnei Hashem, before God. God is great. Atu Flanya. You also have to say who else is invited. That it says you and them and Aharon. So Kilu, they were saying all the people involved. Dikavino and Zimna, and we make up as the time. The puzzle says Mocher. It says tomorrow. All right, Zimna boss Zimna, and if they don't come, so we invite them Nachamol another time. The puzzle says Karusham Paro Melech Mitzrayim She'on Havira Moed. All right. So basically, the way that the drush is Karusham Paro, that they excommunicated Paro Melech Mitzrayim, the king of Egypt, She'on. I don't know, it means like to cry out or something. Havira Moed, because he skipped the time, so they had to make another time, and then they excommunicated him. All right, so if he doesn't show up, then they make him come another time, and they excommunicate him. All right. Let's read that again. So how do we know that if when you come to collect the fellow and to let him know that he's got to come up to court, if he's continues being a shtickle nudnik and he's chutzpahdik to the messengers of the court, and then the messenger of the court comes and tells us who sent the messenger, and he says, look, the guy was being chutzpahdik, so lo mischazik l'shnabisar, it's not like lashon hara. The pasuk says, so any anoshim meim tinaker, that Dasan and Aviram said, even if you poke out our eyes, we ain't going nowhere. We're not coming to Bezdin. So then it says in the next pasuk that Moshe Rabbeinu got very upset. So how did Moshe Rabbeinu know that Dasan and Aviram said that? It must be Memele that the messengers told Moshe Rabbeinu. How do we know that we excommunicate people? Oru Meroz, that they cursed the town of Meroz because they didn't come and join in the fight against Sisera. Dachi Svara Tigav Rabba, and how do we know that this is sort of the desire of a great person. Tichsiv Omer Malach Hashem. It says that the messenger of God said this. All right. Uminolan dimachrminon. Tichsiv Oru Oru. So how do we know that not just do we do nidois, but we also do cherims? That we don't just, cherim is like a more serious, right? As we learned the other day, right? That cherim people, we don't talk to them, we don't do anything, we don't teach them, they don't teach. It's a sort of a next step thing. So how do we know that we do this next step thing, this cherim thing? So it says oru oru, and it says cursed. So that's like a cherim kind of thing. How do you know that how do you know that you're not supposed to eat and drink with this excommunicated fellow? Right. So again, how do you know that somebody who eats and drinks with this fellow and stands within 4 cubits of this fellow? How do we know that that's a problem? Those who settle there, so stay away from the excommunicated fellow. How do we know that we specify publicly what this fellow did? As the pasuk says, it says in the pasuk, well, they didn't come to help out God. Ula says Ula, that Baruch excommunicated the city of Meroz, the town of Meroz, with 400 shofars. He could arm those who say Gavra Rabba Hava, those who say that Meroz was a great fellow. He could arm Kochava Hava, those who say that Meroz was actually a star. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Min Shemaim Nuchama Kochavim, that the stars fought from the heavens against Sisera. How do we know that we make the property of the excommunicado ownerless? The pasuk says, as the pasuk says in where is this? It's in Ezra. It says anybody who doesn't come in 3 days, by the request of the officers and the elders, Yochoram Kol Rechusho, all of his property will become cherim, will become, I guess, ownerless. V'yiboldu mikol agola, and he will be excommunicated, will be separated from the congregation of the exile. All right. How do we know that we contend? V'laitinon, and we curse, u'machinon, and we hit. V'talshinatzer, we pull out hair. Mashbi'inon, and we force to swear. The pasuk says, "V'arav imam," that I fought with them, v'akalim, and I cursed them, v'akamim, and I hit them, anoshim, people, v'amartim, v'ashmiyim, I amartim them, and I made them swear. Right, it sounds like these people are getting themselves into trouble. How do you know that we tie them up, and we tie them up, and how do you know we tie their hands, and we tie them to like a post, v'avdinun hardafa, and we do hardafa, which we'll explain what that is in a second. The puzzle says, "Hein lamus," whether to die, "Hein sharushe," whether it is to sharushe, "Hein la'anish nichsin v'la'asurin," or to be punish property and asurin, forbidden things. Ma'le sharushe, what does it mean? The sharushe, Amar Adamari, Amar Nechemah bar Baruch, Amar B'chia bar Oven, Amar Yehuda hardafa. That sharushe is hardafa. My hardafa, what's hardafa? Amar Yehuda breder of Shmuel bar Shilas b'shmei derab minadin la'alter. Well, we immediately put the fellow in excommunication. V'shon and la'achar shloshim. Then, if after 30 he's still being a nudnik, so then we renew the excommunication for another 30 days. And if after 60 days he's still being a nudnik, so then we up the ante and put him into a cherim, not just a nidui. Alright. Says Rav Huna bar Chinna that this is what Rav Chizda says, Masrin be sheni v'chamishi b'sheni. That actually the way it works is that you wait till Monday, and then you warn him, and then after warning him, he gets into excommunication, v'chamishi, and then they warn him again on Thursday, and kilu, renew it if he hasn't fixed what he's supposed to fix, v'sheni, and then the following Monday, they put him into sort of cherim. Hanimilin the mamona. This is specifically for monetary things, that like if the Bezdin says, hey, you need to, Reuven, you got to pay Shimon money, and Reuven doesn't do it. So then they, sort of do the Monday thing. But avalaf kerusa the altar. But if they're being disrespectful to Talmidei Chachamim, so then immediately we excommunicate them. We don't wait till Monday. There was a certain butcher who was being chutzpahdik to have Tuvi bar Masna. Imnu Ali Abai v'Rava v'Shamtu. So Abai and Rava says, "Hey butcher, you're in excommunication." The Sof also Paisil Valdine. In the end, the butcher he made up. He made shalom. He made up with Reb Tuvi bar Masna. Amar Abai. So Abai says, "Okay." So they made shalom. So now what do we do? Lishrilei lo chosham ta'ali tlos yomin. Well, we can't just undo the excommunication because it hasn't been 30 days yet. It has to be at least 30 days. Lo lishrilei. But if we don't undo the excommunication, kabo rabbanon lemeo. Well, the people need meat. So what do? It's the butcher. Kila on the one hand, we want him to not be in excommunication anymore so that the people can have meat. On the other hand, it hasn't yet been 30 days. So Abai says to Idi bar Oven, he says, "No, have you heard anything about this?" So Amalei Hachyomer of Tachlifu bar Avimi Amar Shmuel. So if Idi bar Oven says, well, this is what Rav Tachlifu bar Avimi said, the name of Shmuel, Tut Asu v'Tut Shari, that the shofar that made him forbidden can also make him permitted. So Ki'ilu, well, Abaye, you're the one who said that he's got to go into excommunication, so you can also permit it. So Vidi bar Oven says to Abaye, look, if you made this fellow in excommunication, so you can undo it. Amarle Hanimini limamon. To which Abai says, yeah, but when we say tudasu v'tuchari, that's by money. But when it comes to being chutzpahdik towards the Talmid Chacham, like this butcher was, so you have to wait 30 days. So we see that Abai holds hani beit tlasa deshamisu lo asu tlasa achrine visharule. So we see that, what do we see? So we see that specifically because Abaye was the one who put this fellow in excommunication. That's why he was unable to undo the excommunication. But we see that he holds that, let's read that again, Hani beit tlasu de shamisu, that if you have a bezdin that puts somebody in a cherem, so then lo asu tlas achrine v'sharule, so a different bezdin would not be able to undo what the original bezdin did. It would have to be the same people. The ibayalu, that they ask the kasha, Hani beit tlasu if you have a bezdin of 3 fellows and they put a fellow into excommunication, can a different bezdin come and undo what the first bezdin did and release him from excommunication? If somebody's excommunicated to the teacher, so then memela he's also excommunicated to all of his students. The Talmud in Menu de l'Rab, but if somebody's excommunicated to a student, then he could still interact with the teacher. If a fellow is excommunicated to his city, then he's also memela excommunicated to all other cities. A fellow who is excommunicated to some other city, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's excommunicated in his own city. A fellow who is excommunicated to the Nasi, to the leader of the generation, so then memele he's also excommunicated to all of Israel. But a fellow who is excommunicated to the Jews, he's not necessarily meaning to like the people, so he's not necessarily excommunicated to the leader. If you have a student and the student excommunicated somebody and then he passed away, lemaise, so now what? He excommunicated the fellow, and now he's dead. So how can you undo? How are you going to undo the excommunication? Chelko eno mufer. So his portion cannot become undone, right? So if you have this student who is part of like a group, and they excommunicated a fellow, and then one of the students dies, so then what? Kilu, you can't really override his position, and he's dead now. Shmamina tlas, we learn from here three things. Shmamina talmud shenida lechvodo niduyu nidui. So we see that a student who excommunicated a fellow because out of his own honor, because I guess he felt that his honor was being offended, so it works. V'shmamina kol echad ve'echad meifir chelko, and we see that each individual can undo his own portion, but if he dies, then his portion doesn't go anywhere. V'shmamina hani beit tlaso d'shamisu lo'asu tlas achrini v'sharulei, and we see that if you have three people who excommunicated, a different group of three would not be able to undo the excommunication of the original three. Amar Meimer says, a Meimer Hilchsa, the halacha is, Hani beit tlasa d'shamisu, if you have three, a bezdin of three, that they put a fellow into excommunication, asu beidina achrina v'sharulei. So it says, a Meimer, that actually the halacha is that a different bezdin would be allowed to undo what the initial bezdin did. Rashi says Tamema v'atanya Reb Shimon Gamliel Omer. But one second, didn't Reb Shimon Gamliel say tamidim shenida v'meis, that if you have a student who excommunicated somebody and then he died, chelka inu mufer, so his portion does not become null and void, meaning that a different bezdin would not be able to undo what he did. So my love, eno mufer klal, that means that his portion from when he was alive, that he took part in excommunication, is not going to be annulled at all. Lo adasu beitzlas achrina v'sharlis. It says Amemar, no, it just means that it's not annulled until a different bezdin of three comes and undoes it. So Amemar wants to argue that actually a different bezdin of three would be able to undo that which the initial bezdin did. Taner Rabbanon, the rabbis taught, nidui pachus milamad yom, an excommunication is no less than 30 days. Ve'nizifa pachus mizayin yomim, and there's no nizifa. Nizifa seems like some kind of like Broygez kind of thing, like to just sort of like show your disapproval. So that is no less than 7 days. Although in my experience, 7 days for Broygez is a bargain. Broygez is the kind of thing that you take with you to the grave, at least in my experience. There's no sort of Broygez that's less than 7 days. And even though there isn't a proof for this, there's sort of an illusion. Shneimar, as the pasuk says, if her father were to show disapproval, were to show Broygez towards her, wouldn't she be sort of perturbed by it for 7 days? So we see that sort of Broygez is a minimum of 7 days. Amar Rav Chizda says of Chizda, Nidui shalanu k'nizifa shaloin, that the excommunication of Bavel is basically the equivalent of the nizifa, the Broygez in Eretz Yisrael, right? The excommunication in Bavel is like the Broygez in Eretz Yisrael. Nizifa to do shiva, and the Broygez of in Eretz Yisrael is 7 days. V'sulo, wait, but no more than 7 days. V'ha Reb Shimon bar Rebbe uvar kapara, but there was an incident, an anecdote, where you had Reb Shimon, the son of Rebbe, and bar kapara. Haviyasvi v'garse. They were sitting and they were learning. Kasha l'shmaita, and they had a kasha, they had a question. Omerle Reb Shimon the bar kapara, and Reb Shimon bar Rebbe says to bar kapara, Dover zetzarech Rebbe. We need my father, we need Rebbe to help us answer this. Omerle bar kapara Reb Shimon. Bar kapara says to Reb Shimon bar Rebbe, Umar Rebbe Omer b'davar zeh. What could any rabbi do to help us with this? Ki'ilu, I don't think that your father Rebbe is going to be able to help us. Omar leila avua Reb Shimon bar Rebbe. Right. Also, Omar leila avua Reb Shimon bar Rebbe told his father, not necessarily on purpose, but he was relaying the anecdote, and that Bar Kapara said that nobody would be able to help them. Ikbid, and Rebbe got Broygez. He got upset. Also, Bar Kapara l'schazuyele. Bar Kapara went to visit Rebbe, because Rebbe, as Rashi points out, Rebbe was sick, and Bar Kapara went to visit him. Amrle Bar Kapara, Eini makircha me'olam, And Rebbe said, Bar Kapara, I don't know who you are. Yada Dinaka Milsa Bedaite. Bar Kapara realized, Rebbe's insulted. Nogni Zivusa Benafshit Tlosin Yomin. So he then went and he stayed away for 30 days. Shuv Pamachas Gaza Rebbe Shlo Yishanu Tamidim Bashuk. Another time, Rebbe declared that they shouldn't be teaching Torah out in the market in like a highly public manner. My Darash, how come? Because the pasuk says in Shirashim, Chamuka Yerechayis Kmo Chaloim, that your thighs are like jewelry. Mayarich Baseiser, just like your thigh is hidden, right? You're wearing pants or epis. Avdivrei Torah Baseiser, also the words of Torah should be hidden. You shouldn't just be out in the market teaching Torah in such a public forum. But nonetheless, Reb Chia did not heed Rebbe's edict, and he taught Torah to his two nephews in the market. L'Rav, Reb Chia's nephew was Rav, Rav Bar Bachana, as well as Rabbi Bar Bachana, who was maybe like his great nephew or something. Shama Rebbe Ikpid. And Rebbe heard that Reb Chia was teaching Torah in public, and he got upset because Rebbe had said that you should not be teaching Torah in public. Teach it privately. Also, Reb Chia went to visit Rebbe. Rebbe says to Reb Chia, Aya mikorelach bachutz. He says, Aya, who's calling you outside? Right? Rebbe is sort of in a derogatory kind of way said to Reb Chia, he didn't call him Reb Chia, he called him Reb Aya. And so it's kind of like he's trying to show his disapproval to Reb Chia. Now, in my mind, we saw somewhere else also some kind of reference to changing the name of Reb Chia, changing the letter in his name, but I couldn't find it. But I seem to remember that this isn't like the first place where we suggest maybe we could change a letter in Reb Chia's name. But okay. So Yada Dunaka Milsa B'daite, from the fact that Rebbe said to him, to Reb Chia, like, Aya, why don't you, somebody's calling you outside. Reb Chia realized, like, Rebbe is insulted. So Nagni Zivusa B'nafshit Tlosin Yomin. So he so Reb Chia kind of stayed away for 30 days. So we see that this Nazifa is 30 days. Biyom Tlosin Shalach Le Ta. And then on day 30, Rebbe sent to Reb Chia. He said, "Nu, Kumaran, come over here. Come to me," says Rebbe to Reb Chia. Rebbe then actually sent him a follow-up. Actually, Reb Chia, do not come. What did Rebbe initially figure? What was his initial assumption? What was his initial logic for sending to Reb Chia that he should come? And how come he then changed his mind? So, initially Rebbe figured that part of the day is like the whole day. So Kilu, when day 30 comes, so Rebbe figured on day 30 he would send to Reb Chia, because once day 30 starts, part of the day is like the whole day. So it's like day 30 full days have passed. So he figured, let me send to Reb Chia that he should come. But then he retracted and said, actually, we don't say that part of the day is like the entire day. Therefore, we need to wait 30 full days, so that actually Reb Chia should not be coming. The Sof also, but in the end, Reb Chia actually came. So Rebbe says to Reb Chia, how come you came? I sent to you in the end not to come. So Reb Chia says, well, you sent to me that I should come. Says Rebbe to Reb Chia, but then I sent to you that you should not come. To which Reb Chia says, I only got the first memo, I didn't get the second one. Right? And therefore, I thought you wanted to see me. So Rebbe said about this situation, that when God sort of is in desire of the ways of man, so then even his enemies will make shalom with him, will make peace with him. So Kilu, I guess Reb Chia was a great person. So Rebbe was saying that, when God sort of wants the ways of a fellow, in this case Reb Chia, then even his enemies are going to make peace with him. I.e., even Rebbe, who was upset with Reb Chia, even against his wishes, he kind of made, it was sort of destined that they were going to make up. My time of Ovid, my hochi. So then Rebbe says to Reb Chia, how come you were teaching Torah publicly when I said that you should not? The pasuk says, "Chochmos b'chutz Torona." Well, wisdom needs to sort of rejoice or be vocal outside. So therefore, Reb Chia figured that he should teach Torah in public, in the market. Amalei, to which Rebbe responds to Reb Chia, Im karisa lo shanisa, v'im shanisa lo shilashta, v'im shilashta lo pershilach. Let's read that again. Im karisa lo shanisa. If you read that pasuk once, you didn't read it a second time. V'im shanisa lo shilashta. If you read it a second time, you didn't read it a third time. V'im shilashta lo pershilach. And if you did read it a first, a second, and a third time, and you still didn't get it, well then clearly they did not explain it to you. Chachmus b'chutz Torona kidirava. That when it says that wisdom should sort of express itself outside, it's like Rava the Amarava that says Rava kol osik b'Torah mibifnim Torah machrezes oz mibachutz. That anybody who studies Torah internally, so then the Torah sort of announces for itself externally. Interesting, right? So I guess meaning if a person studies Torah with a geschmack, so then you could even tell externally, wow, this is a fellow who studies Torah with a geschmack. Wow, and that's what you learn out from Chochmos b'chutz Torona. But one second, but nonetheless, what about the pasuk of Lo merosh b'seisir dibarti? But what about the fact that the pasuk says that I didn't speak to you in secret, in private, i.e. implying that the Torah should be out in the public, like Reb Chia. How b'yom dechala? That's specifically on sort of these days, getting ready in preparation for the Shalosh Regalim, where they were, in those cases they would speak, they would teach Torah, publicly, but otherwise it should be sort of kept quiet. Reb Chia, what did Reb Chia, how did he learn the pasuk that Rebbe expounded of Chamuke Rechayich, that your thighs are comparing the Torah to a thigh, and therefore a thigh is sort of in secret, so therefore Torah should be taught in secret. So what does Reb Chia, who taught Torah in the market, do with that pasuk? So Mukila b'tzedakah u'gemilas chasadim. So he says that pasuk is talking about tzedakah and acts of goodness, right? Charity and acts and doing good deeds. Those things should be done sort of quietly, with humility, with modesty, and should not be flaunted. Alma nazifa dedu tlas and yomin. So the Gemara says, no. So what do we see? So we see from both of these stories, with Bar Kapara and Rebbe, with Reb Chia and Rebbe, that Rebbe was disapproved of what they did. And they were the Broygez lasted for 30 days, not just 7 days. So, and for the Gemara Nizifas Nasi Shani, well, it was different because Rebbe was the Nasi. Rebbe was like the leader, and therefore that's why his Broygez, his Nizifa, lasts for 30 days, whereas a regular person would just be 7 days. In fact, the Gemara wants to know, Nizifa Didan Kamahave, and how long is our Broygez in Bavel? So Chad Yom, it's 1 day. Like Shmuel and Mar Ukva, Kavu Yasve, Garse, Shmaita, when they would study Torah today, Shmuel and together. So Shmuel and Mar Ukva, we haven't seen too much Mar Ukva, I think, recently, but he came up a lot, like Masechta Shabbos, I think. He was the Av Bezdin. He was the head of the Bezdin over there. So it says that when Shmuel and Mar Ukva would study Torah together, Hava Yosef Mar Ukva Kamed Shmuel, Mar Ukva would sit before Shmuel because Shmuel was a bigger Talmud Chacham. So Mar Ukva would sit before Shmuel. Berichuk Dalet Amos 4 Amos away. Avu Yazve Bedina, and when they were in a court, in a Bezdin, Hava Yosef Shmuel Kamed Mar Ukva Berichuk Dalet Amos. Then Shmuel would sit before Mar Ukva at a distance of 4 Amos, because in the court, Mar Ukva was the head of the court. So therefore, Shmuel would be sitting in front of Mar Ukva. Vavu Chayke lay, and Vavu Chayke lay the Duchta, the Mar Ukva, B'tzifta, and they would lower down Mar Ukva's sort of seat onto like mats, V'yosef Bilov, and he would sit on that, Kechid L'shtamun Milei, so that he would be able to hear from Shmuel what he had to say. So Kilu, Mar Ukva was the Av Bezdin, was the head of the court. Shmuel would sit before him because Mar Ukva was in the court where he's the head. But at the same time, they would lower down Mar Ukva's chair, and he would sit on like mats, so that he would be able to communicate with Shmuel, who was the bigger Talmud Chacham. Kol Yoma Hava milavile Mar Ukva l'Shmuel ad ushpize, and every day Mar Ukva would walk Shmuel home to his house. Yom Echad Itrid Bedine, and one day Mar Ukva was very sort of involved with what was going on in the Bezdin, in the court, the sugya that he was working with. Hava Ozil Shmuel Basrei, and because of that, because Mar Ukva's head was in the clouds, so Shmuel ended up walking behind him, which is not respectful for Shmuel to be walking behind him, but Mar Ukva just didn't know what was flying because he was so involved in whatever was going on in his head regarding the court. So Kimata Levese, when Shmuel arrived at his house, Amalei, he says to Mar Ukva, Lo nagalach lishrei li mar betigri. So Shmuel got a shtickle Broygez, and he says, and he says like, why are you, where am I? Right, so have the Rishusal Mehader, right? Right? Right, I've been walking behind you the whole time. Do I have permission now to go into my house? So Yada Dinakad Milsa Bedaite. So Mar Ukva knew then that Shmuel was Broygez with him. So Nog Nizivusa Benafshech Ad Yoma. So Mar Ukva stayed away for a day. Hahi Itza Davas Yasva B'Shvila. There was a woman who was sitting on the road. Havas Pashta Kara, and she was sitting, and her leg was blocking the road. Vikam Anifa Chushlai, and she was winnowing kernels of barley, I think. And a certain Torah student walked by, and she didn't get out of the way for him. Omar he says, wow, this woman is being chutzpahdik. She didn't get out of the way for me. So then she figured the worst. She figured, what did I do? This fellow probably excommunicated me. Omar lo. So Rav Nachman says to her, Mishama shamta mipume. Did you hear the fellow say that he's excommunicating you? Omar lo. She says, no, I didn't hear that he's excommunicating me. Omar lo. So Rav Nachman says to her, Zilin hugen izivusa chad yoma benafshich. So she says, all right, so just go and stay away for a day, and that'll be that. Zutra bar Tuvia have a kapasik sidra kamid of Yehuda. Zutra bar Tuvia was teaching psukim in front of Rav Yehuda Kimat Alai Psuka. When he got to the following pasuk in Shmuel Beis, Ve'ele divrei David achronim, that these are the words, the prophecy of, right? Rashi points out that divrei is a lashon of prophecy. These are the later, right? This is the later prophecy of David. So now Zutra bar Tuvia says to Rav Yehuda, well, if David HaMelech is saying that this was his second prophecy that he's expressing, so what was the first one? Rishonim Ma'ninu. What was the first one? Shazik v'lo amalei v'lo midi, and Rav Yehuda didn't answer. Rav Yehuda didn't answer what the first one, what the first prophecy of David HaMelech was. Hadar amalei achronim m'chladik rishonim. So now Zutra bar Tuvia repeated the question to Rav Yehuda, meaning he asked Rav Yehuda, so what was the first prophecy? Rav Yehuda was quiet. So Zutra bar Tuvia asked again. Thought maybe Rav Yehuda didn't hear or something. He asked again. Rishonim Mai, what was the first example of the prophecy of that David shared? Omer le maidaitech telo yoda perusha da'ikra lav gaver abu. So Rav Yehuda says to Zutra bar Tuvia, what do you think? Just because I don't know the answer to this pasuk of what it means and what the original prophecy was, that means that I'm not a great person? So Zutra bar Tuvia realized that he insulted Rav Yehuda, and he kind of just stayed away for a day. But one second, once already we asked the question, what's the answer, right? Meaning, if we're saying that these are the words of, right, the later words of David, so then what were the earlier ones? So Rishonim Mai, what are the earlier words of prophecy of King David? By David Hashem is Divrei Ashir Azos, that David spoke to God the words of this song. B'yom hitzel Hashem osu mikaf oivav mikav shol, on the day that God saved him from his enemies and from Saul. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu to David. Then God says to David, right? David said, right? What did David say in the pasuk? Let's read it again, right? Vaydaber David Hashem is divrei ashir azos, that David composed the song on the day that he was saved from Saul, from Shaul. David. So then God says to David, David Shira'ata Omer Amapalto Shel Shaul. What, King David, are you singing and rejoicing because of the downfall and the death of Shaul? Ilmale Ata Shaul Vihu David Ibadti Kama David Mipana. Friends, do you hear this? Let's read that again. Ilmale Ata Shaul, David, if you switched roles, if you were Shaul, Vihu David, and he was King David, Ibadti Kama David Mipana, we would have lost several Davids, meaning all of the stuff that Shaul did. King David HaMelech, if it was you in his shoes, it would have been far worse. He's a bigger tzaddik than you are. Hainu Dichsiv, this is what the pasuk says, Shigayun LeDavid, Asher Sharla Hashem Adive Kush Ben Yemini. That this was like the confusion of King David, that he sang about Kush Ben Yemini. And Kush Ben Yemini is a reference to Shaul HaMelech. Why are they calling him Kush, the son of Yemini? I thought his name was Shaul, not Kush. Rather, it's that just like a Kushi, a fellow from Kush, has very unique skin, so therefore also King David was very unique in his ways. We also say something similar. I'm sorry, not David, Shaul, right? So they call him Kush Ben Yemini because Shaul was very good with his midos, he was very good in his ways. And similarly we say that it says that Miriam and Aaron were talking about Moshe Rabbeinu because of the Cushite woman that he married. Her name isn't Cushis, her name is Tzipora. Ella, Makushis Meshuna Ba'ora, Av Tzipora Meshuna B'Maisel, that just like a person from Kush has unique skin, so also also Tzipora was unique in her ways. And similarly, we say Vaishma Eved Melech Akushi, that the servant of the Kushi king heard, his name isn't Kushi, his name is Tzidkiah. Just like a Kushi has unique skin, also Tzidkiah was unique in his ways. And similarly, it says that Israel, you are like the children of Cush. Their name isn't Cush, their name is Israel. Well, just like a Kushi, a person from Kush has unique skin, so also the Yidden are unique in their ways from all of the other nations. Omer Shmuel ben Achmani, Omer B'Yonasan, says Shmuel ben Achmani in the name of B'Yonasan. What does the pasuk mean? Num David ben Yishai v'num Agever hu kam all. So the words of David, the son of, how do you say Yishai in English? Ishai? Alright. Jesse? David, the son of Jesse? That sounds nice. V'num Agever hu kam all. And the word of the fellow who overcame all. Alright, let's go back to Num David ben Yishai. The words of David, the son of Jesse, Shehekim Ula Shel Tshuva, that he established the yoke of repentance, that he's sort of like the example of repentance. Amar Eloke Yisrael Li Diber, that he said that the God of Israel spoke to me, Tzur Yisrael Moshe Ba'adam, that the rock of Israel, that God rules over man, but Tzadik Moshe Yiras Elokim, that a righteous fellow rules over the fear of God. My Amar, what does that mean? Amar Babo, says Babo, Hachikam, this is what it means. Amar Eloke Yisrael Li Diber, that God spoke to me, so Yisrael Ani Moshe Ba'adam, that says God that he rules over man. Mi Moshe Bi, who rules over me, says God, Tzadik, Shani gozer gzera mevatla. A tzaddik is able to rule over me, says God, that I decree decrees and the tzaddik annuls them. Wow. These are the names of the mighty ones that were with David. Yoshe Basheves V'Gomer. My Kamer, what does this mean? So Amar Baba says, Rabbi Baba, Achi Kamer, this is what it means. Ve'ele Shmos Gvurosov Shel David. That this is like the greatness of David. Yoshe Basheves B'Shal Shahayu Yoshe Ba'Yeshiva, that when he would sit in the yeshiva, Lo Hayu Yoshev Agab B'Kar Muchsasos, he would not sit on cushions and things in the yeshiva. Ella Agab B'Karke, he would sit on the floor. That when David HaMelech's teacher Ira Ayaori was around, Hava Masne Luhu Lirabanon Agabi Kar Muchsasos. So David HaMelech's Rebbe, his teacher Ira Ayaori, he would sit on cushions and things when he taught. Ki noch nafshe, when Ira Ayaori passed away, Hava Masne David Lirabanon, then King David was teaching the people there in Vav Yosef Agabi Karka, and he would sit on the ground. Amrule, they said to him, Leisiv Ma'akar Muchsasos, why don't you sit on pillows and cushions? Lo Kibul Ale, he didn't want to do that. That was for his Rebbe, not for him. Tachkimoni, says the pasuk, that you have, I don't know, maybe smart. Amr Rav says, Rav, Amrullah Kadosh Baruch Hu, that God says to King David, Ho v'ishpalta atzmecha, that since you have made yourself low, that you've lowered yourself, Take Hamoni, you shall be like me. Shani goes that I make decrees and you annul them. Rosh Shalishi, the head of the thirds. Tehei Rosh Lishloshes Avos, you should be head of the three fathers. Who Adino Ha'etzni, he is Adino Ha'etzni. What does that mean? When he would sit and study Torah, he would sort of roll himself up like a worm. Alright. But when he would go out to war, he would make himself strong like a stick. Al Shmona Meus Chalal, that on 800 corpses, bepamachas at once, shoyezoik chaitz, that he would shoot an arrow, umapil Shmona Meus Chalal, and with one arrow he would knock down 800 corpses, bepamachas in one go. Vaymasanachal Mosayim, and he was sort of annoyed that he didn't get 1,000, an additional 200. The pasuk says, Echad Elef, how one fellow could chase 1,000. So David HaMelech wanted to get 1,000, not just 800 in one shot. That the voice came out from heaven. It says, well, look, the fact of the matter is, what you did with Bathsheba wasn't exactly 100% clean, with an Uriah Chiti or then husband. So instead of shooting an arrow and killing 1,000 fellows, shoot an arrow and kill 800. All right, friends, that was Daf Tes Zayin of Masechta Moed Katan. It was a relatively interesting daf, I think. Talks about excommunications, different ways of summoning people to court, and what that's like. We talked about Broygez, about the excommunications being 30 days, and how in Eretz Yisrael, what do we call it? What was it called? The Broygez. What do we call the Broygez? I don't know. No, I can't remember. What was the Broygez? Nazifa, Broygez. So now it's so it was 7 days. They asked the Kasha, but 1 second, Reb Chia and Bar Kapara, Rebbe was Broygez with them, and they stayed away for 30 days, not just 7 days. We said that was different because it was Reb Yehuda Anasi, whereas just a regular fellow in Eretz Yisrael, Broygez was 7 days. But then we saw that in Bavel, though, Broygez is for only 1 day. So, interesting stuff. Alright, friends, that was Daf 16. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.